initial reaction when the show first came out was that it had a similar sort of feel to Chuck in that it was a computer chip in the head.
Maybe a similar concept.
Concept,
but not feel.
yes, because it's much darker, not as much humor. Hopefully, maybe we'll get some coming, but
more grounded.
Yeah.
We haven't seen Chuck, but that's what we're told.
We'll talk about where the concept came from and sort of how it is different from
take
that.
this one.
Go.
Okay. The whole thing really started with a book, a manuscript called Phoenix Island, which involved a guy that had a microchip implanted in his brain that gave him enhanced abilities. The abilities in the book were physical mostly. It was kind of strength and speed and that type of thing. And when I gave it to Michael and we started talking about it, he was really struggling with what makes this different from what we see with Marvel and all the superhero movies. I mean, all the superheroes, the vast majority of them have those physical attributes. And that got us talking about what other powers could a superhero have? And given what was going on in the world and what's going on in the technology world, it seemed like we kind of came up with this idea that this could be something that, in the future, and there was some research that we did that actually confirmed all this, that, in the future you wouldn't need Google Glass, you would just be able to do it, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of where the whole thing kind of started and came from.
Yeah, we wanted to ground it. I mean, again, we haven't seen Chuck, but we understand it's a comedy. And I'm not being flip. I mean, we really haven't seen it, but we have heard this question a lot. Like, it's similar to Chuck. So apparently, it has a chip in his brain. But we wanted to go for something that felt like it was ripped out of the headlines. That it wasn't something that felt like it was in the future, and it wasn't something that felt like it was an alternative reality. It felt like something that was happening right now. And so we looked at things like the woman who was on 60 Minutes, who has they implanted a chip in her brain so that she could operate a robotic arm. She's a quadriplegic. And there's a story out of Minnesota, the scientists in Minnesota who developed a quadcopter that can operate using only the mind, because they mapped the brain signals that correspond with hand gestures, and they translated those into the navigation inputs of the quadcopter. There are scientists in Utah who have been mapping brain signals, and as they correspond to words that are spoken, because what they're trying to do is develop a way for people with locked-in syndrome to communicate. But all of these were chip-and-brain experiments. And so we thought, well, what is the device of our time? And that is, as I think Eric Schmidt had put it in an interview I read,